What's up, everybody, and welcome to Bios3 Raw TV. Today we're going to be touching on a couple of points, a couple of subjects and topics that have popped up lately. One of them is that whole Ogus G4P thing, which we'll probably start off with. The other thing is Dorian Yates and Layne Norton, an argument that they're having, or an argument that they had. And another thing is Dorian Yates, who Dorian did a video about steroids, which I find pretty interesting. I think you guys will too. So the first thing let's start off with is Matt and his whole G4P thing. Now, I don't know what you guys are talking about. We started posting on my video, don't touch his hand, you don't know what's been, blah, 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 blah. And somebody posted a link to a video that was him doing like a couple poses in it. Guys, give me a break, okay? G4P means that you're actually out there making pornos with other guys, having sex with guys for money. Posing in a camera is not G4P. I have a friend she's a bodybuilder. She's a very, very attractive bodybuilder girl. And she's in college, and she was working a job, and et cetera, and found out that she could make $8 a minute. Okay? $8 a minute. That's pretty ridiculous. Okay, it's like $640 an hour doing some posing. You do that a couple days a week, that's like $1,300 in your pocket. And she's not doing anything that she wouldn't do on stage. Okay? There's a lot of creepers in the stage. There's a lot of schmoes, I mean, not on the stage, in the show, that sit in the show. Some of them have cameras that call themselves photographers. And they're right in your face trying to interact and talk to you. Okay, so that's no different than them sitting front row taking pictures of you that they're going to go home and jack off to anyways. The difference is you don't get paid for it. So I don't think Matt did anything wrong. I don't think that, it's everybody's cup of tea. I had a friend who, when we were younger, decided he was going to strip at a gay club. That was his thing. He didn't want to work a day job. That's what he went and did. I turned a different way. I went to bouncing because it was just easier money for me. I was uncomfortable with the whole dancing for gay people at the time. And, it worked out for me. It worked out for him. I mean, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, you got to do what you got to do to get by. And this sport's an expensive sport. So, I mean, Matt making the video, which he didn't have to do on the way back from the Arnold, was a cool step as far as I'm concerned. He didn't have to answer to anyone, but he did. He told his side of the story, and he stood up and said, this is what I did, and, whether I'm proud of it or not, whatever. It's a fact that happened. Oh, well, get past it. So I think that everybody should just kind of leave him alone at this point and say, fuck, at least he's a stand-up guy, and he said that he did it, and fucking he said why he did it. So it's time to just kind of leave him alone and move on, guys. The second part of this video is the Layne Norton and Dorian Yates feud. Man, Layne, you just don't, I'm looking at it right now. I have it open on the laptop. And Layne says to Dorian, why do you believe the studies are flawed? Please cite specific points. Okay. The only one to begin with, back in the day, using scientific evidence for training at all, was Arthur Jones, that led to Mike Mentzer, that led to Dorian Yates. So these guys are the only ones that had training based on science, Layne. They based their stuff on scientific studies and what was happening at the time. So you picking a fight with him, his training style was handed down through scientific studies and trials and then adapted to get him to where he was. So fucking with him doesn't make any sense because he was way before you were working with the scientific community. Hello? And Dorian said he won 6 Mr. Olympia titles. Anything else? That means he was the best in the world at doing what he did, doing it how he did it. How the fuck can you bust his balls when he did something that you never did or never will, Layne? Okay, you sit there and I won titles, blah, blah, blah. You have competed against people that were nowhere near the level of the NPC and the IFBB, okay? So big deal, you beat a few people that fucking could have never stood on an IFBB stage. You get the balls to bust Dorian's balls about it? He ushered in a whole new revolutionary size to bodybuilding and conditioning. He completely changed the sport of bodybuilding. And you're going to tell him that his studies, he should have followed some kind of studies that you think are the right way to do it. He did his own studies. He created his own way. So in essence, he's a scientist doing the studies that he replicated over and over again on himself. So technically, there's your scientific evidence. All right? And then, Layne goes on to say he respects his accomplishment, but I don't prop my PhD or other accolades to defend a point, sir. Yes, you do, Layne. PhD this. Here's all my trophies in the background over there. Look what I've done. And you just said, well, and right inside this thing, well, I've been training for 15 years and won plenty of titles. Well, that's what you're doing. You're putting your accolades in there. You're being a hypocrite in your own Twitter feed against Dorian because you're losing the fact that you can't say anything to him. You can't bust his balls. You can tell him you want science all you want, but he's already done something and accomplished something that science wasn't able to have anyone else accomplish. Lee Haney wasn't using your scientific stuff. Arnold Schwarzenegger he was the most instinctive trainer out there. There was no fucking science behind what he did. And there's 14 years worth of Olympias right there, not including Dorian's. And you think Ronnie was using the scientific studies? Ronnie had his own way of doing things. In it boggles my mind that you want to talk about these studies and all this bullshit when these champions are being the best in the world at what they do. Lane, you're not the best in the world at anything. Nothing. Okay? So leave them alone. Your whole scientific thing, stay with your scientific community. As far as the bros and the champions, leave us alone because we're busy being famous and helping people. Now, the third part of this video is about Dorian talking about steroids. Dorian, from what I understand, I've only met him a couple times, is a very stand-up guy. He seems pleasant all the time. He'll talk to the fans and stuff. But they asked him about steroids and what he thought. And he claimed straight up, I used them for 12 years all through competition. He said what he used, which I believe the dosage is because back then the steroids actually were real. They weren't half-dosed, quarter-dosed, underdosed. They were legit. So if he took 50 milligrams of D-ball, that's what he took. Okay, nowadays if you take 50 milligrams, you get like 3 milligrams. All right, I remember back in the day taking those Russian Diana balls that were 5 milligrams. Okay, they came like wrapped in the rubber band. You could take 3 of those things and blow up like a balloon. Nowadays, that would only be 15 milligrams. Nowadays, guys are talking about taking 100 milligrams of D-ball, and they look like shit because the drugs are not the same. Okay, they were better quality, higher dosed. They were legit. And Dorian went on to talk about how over 12 years, all he had was a little bit of aggression, a little bit of acne, and some bloating. That's 12 years of almost constant use. Straight up. He just said it straight up. And then he actually said, you know what, he has a friend who's getting a kidney transplant due to an over-the-counter medication for pain relief. So technically, and this guy was on this thing for like 3 weeks, so technically steroids for 12 years in massive dosages, far beyond what pharmacology knows, is safer than this over-the-counter pain medication, which is like Advil. Think about it. And then they went on to ask him if his son came to him and said, Dad, I want to be a bodybuilder, I want to do a cycle of steroids. What he would say to him, what he recommended to him. Dorian laughed and said, he's 28 years old and that conversation has already happened and he already has. So yes, I think they're safe and I think if he does it the right way, he's fine. So there you have a guy who not only just talks the talk, but he believes himself so strongly that steroids are not only not dangerous, but are not going to mess you up at all, that he recommended that his kid go ahead and use them. So how do you got to respect that guy for standing to his beliefs and actually saying straight out these things that he's saying that a lot of people tiptoe around. You know, a lot of the pros nowadays, they're not going to say anything because they're in the midst of using them right now, so they don't want to incriminate themselves. But many of the pros or other bodybuilders talk about it openly with each other because it's just stupid. The fact that the stuff is stupid and people think it kills you is just dumb. So that's going to wrap up this edition of Bios3 Raw TV. So I know some of you are not going to like what I had to say about Layne because, you know, anytime anyone gets called out, the bottom line is if you don't want to get called out and you don't want to have issues, stop shooting your mouth off to people that have done things that you haven't done and been places you haven't been and trying to fuck with them. Especially Dorian. He's a quiet guy. You don't like to be messed with. Bios3training@gmail.com. Leave comments down below. www.bios3training.com and we're out.